Hey guys, welcome to video 2 for chapter 30. And for this one, we're going to be talking about the industrialized democracies. And what we mean by that are actually the losers of World War II, Germany and Japan. Both of those had to change their ways. They were forced to change their ways, mostly by the United States. But they were both very impressively able to build themselves up into industrial powers in the decades after World War II. Non-imperialistic, non-militaristic industrial powers are the key there. So it was a combination of some good nation building on part of the allies, the winning allies, especially the United States, and also just some good, kind of self-building industriousness on the part of Germany and Japan. So let's first talk about kind of set the stage here real quick. As we've talked about in previous chapters and even a little bit in the first video for this one, Europe was a disaster after World War II. Okay, you see a lot of urban fighting going on, destroyed cities, destroyed towns. This bottom picture here, I mean, if you looked at it real quick, you'd think that that was Hiroshima and Nagasaki after the atomic bomb. That was the German city of Dresden. That was firebombed by the Allies, killed tens of thousands of people. So there was a lot of rebuilding that needed to go on afterwards, okay? Literal rebuilding of actual homes and businesses and kind of like a metaphorical rebuilding of the countries themselves. Now, first, let's look at Germany. Now, Germany obviously was the big one that the Allies had to look at because they had done a lousy job with it after World War I. And because Germany was in such rough shape, that allowed extremists like Hitler to come to power. So the Allies learned from their mistakes and said, we can't do that again. So we have to really rebuild it. Now, as we talked about in the previous video, Germany was divided after the war. You had East Germany, which is communist, and you had West Germany, which is capitalist and democratic. And then within East Germany, you also have the divided Berlin as well. I remember that was kind of like an island unto itself, just connected to West Germany and the rest of it. So West Germany experienced really what they referred to as the West German miracle, a tremendous amount of success when it came to the building of its industry. We often think of the car industry, Volkswagens and things of that nature. But it really showed a tremendous amount of industriousness in building up its economy. West Germany became successful, it became thriving, and it really became an example for the capitalist democratic West of, look, this is what happens. Conversely, East Germany, not so much. East Germany was struggling under communism. There was not a widespread acceptance of it. You got to remember, the Germans for years had experienced, even under fascism. Fascism is not communism. Fascism was still built more on private ownership and industry, and now they're having communism jammed down their throat. And it just wasn't working all that well. You saw signs like this. Stores would have lines around the block because they were constantly running out of supplies. You didn't have that mass production that you found in the West with assembly line industry and so forth. So it really became kind of like a stark contrast between the two of the blossoming West Germany turning itself into industrial power and the struggling East Germany. Now, the welfare state is not referring specifically to East Germany. Okay, the welfare state was it was a term used to describe government support for certain aspects of society, right? Usually looking to supplement and help out people that are in need. Food stamps, all right? Food stamps are an example of government welfare programs. And the welfare state referred to, in places like in Great Britain through the 1960s and 70s, where the government was providing an awful lot of these support mechanisms. Okay, so they expand what we call social benefits. Food stamps are an example. We'll go through a couple of others with the advantages, but anything that is meant to kind of help you out, and especially the lower rungs of society, but is also provided by government. Okay, these are not privately funded benefits. Now, there are some advantages to this. Old age pensions, okay, retirement pensions for the old after they stop working. That's a good thing, right? You want to make sure grandma and grandpa are taken care of. Unemployment benefits, if you are unable to work, if you get laid off through no fault of your own and you can receive an unemployment check, that's a good thing. We offer that here in the United States. You're not supposed to get unemployment if you quit or are fired, but still, it happens. Also, socialized medicine. The healthcare provided for the old, for the young, right? On the surface, that's a good thing. It is. Now, I know that, that opens up a whole controversy here in the United States of talking about the pros and the cons of it. But I think, just making sure that people receive medicine and healthcare in and of itself is not a bad thing. It's how you implement it that can lead to a lot of shouting matches on the news. Now, some disadvantages of it. All of this stuff, it comes from the government. And where does government money come from? Taxes. So you look at more socialized states that we have in the world today. Northern Europe, right? Denmark, Norway, Canada. Taxes can be very high there. And so that is an unfortunate disadvantage of it, is that you're going to be taxed more. Also, it leads to a much more of a kind of cooperation between government and business that a lot of people may be comfortable with. Conservatives in particular do not like government getting involved in private business or their private lives. And the welfare state requires government to get involved because the government is providing all of these services. So for a lot of people, that's a downside. Now, the EEC, European Community. The EEC is kind of like a predecessor to the EU that we have today. It was formed in 1957, and you notice that a lot of, Western Europe was in it. The original members, right? You got France, Netherlands, Belgium, West Germany, Italy, and then the UK joined in 1973, Spain and Portugal in the 80s. By today in the EU, you've got a lot more countries involved in it. But as I said, this is kind of like the predecessor. And the purpose of it was establishing free trade. All right, this is well before you got euros or anything like that, but it was meant to facilitate trade between all these countries in order to improve all of their economies, and not only goods, but allow workers to move freely across borders, right? So if there's jobs in France, it's easier for Italians to go and search there, or vice versa, or whatever. Okay, so that's the European Community, kind of a predecessor to the current model that we have today called the European Union. Now, Japan, right? So we've been talking a lot about Europe and Germany, but Japan obviously was very much involved in World War II as well. At the end of the war, they had to change their government. Here you see a picture of Emperor Hirohito signing the new constitution. The constitution was drawn up by the United States, okay? We forced them upon him and said, you can't have the military anymore. You just can't be trusted with it. And you have to change your government so that the emperor is not all powerful. So today, they have what's called a constitutional monarchy, very similar to what you see in Great Britain. They have a prime minister, okay? There you have Prime Minister Abe here on the left, and you have Emperor Akihito, who is the Emperor Hirohito's son, there on the right. And the emperor is a figurehead, okay, does not have any true governmental power. He is the head of state. He is the face of Japan, the way that the Queen of England is the head of state in Great Britain, but the prime minister is the head of government, okay? So this new changes in the government take place after World War II. Rapid economic improvement. One thing about the Japanese is that they can be very, very industrious when push comes to shove. I think of the Meiji Restoration, how they go all in for these adaptations. They modernize their industry, right? You see an awful lot of tech involved in it. That is something that is a hallmark of the Japanese economy. Women involved in the workforce as well, okay? This rapid kind of adoption of assembly line industry. And they became a very, very strong manufacturing economy, particularly in areas such as automobiles, right? We think of how the Japanese automobile companies revolutionized the automobile industry, particularly here in the United States. It forced American automobile companies to make significant changes in both the size of our cars and the quality of our cars. Now, what this all leads to is a trade surplus. All right, they are selling more than they're buying, and that is very, very good for their economy. Okay, so just a bit on the industrial democracies, and the next one we're going to be getting into communism in China.